Good morning, everyone. You are very, very welcome to today's session. My name is Marie Schrader, and I'm the Head of Marketing Communications with GS1 Ireland. And we are delighted to have Colm Rooney, Country Manager Ireland of Shopper Intelligence, with us today.
Hello. Thanks, Maria.
Check everybody's muted there. Thanks. So you're very, very welcome. Today is the first in a two-part session that we are running in association with Shopper Intelligence. Today, Colm will present an overview of what he calls the state of the nation. So it's a look at the entire sort of Irish grocery shopper market here in Ireland. We've been working with Shopper Intelligence for 3 years now. So it's, I suppose the great part of that is we've inserted an extra couple of questions into the research that Colm does, where we very much look at topics around traceability, sustainability, and Irishness. And we'll be covering off those particular elements in the second webinar in this series, which comes up on the 20th of October. But today, Colm's, as I said, is going to look at state of the nation. And it'll be very interesting to see, I suppose, not only how things have changed in the last year with the pandemic, but also, how things have maybe changed since pre-pandemic times in 2019. So I suppose the first two big things, one, Colm loves getting questions right throughout his presentation. So feel free to either put your hand up, pop a question into the chat. You'll find the chat there in your control panel on Zoom. Or if it's a complicated question, feel free to pop your hand up and we can take you off mute and you can answer your question directly. And we'll also have a Q&A at the very end. The presentation will take about 40 minutes in all, so there is time at the end to take questions. So think of your questions, pop them in the chat, and we also have one or two little polls during the session. So do keep an eye out for those when they get launched. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Colm.
Thank you, Maria. And yeah, it is 3 years, and every year reminds me I must change my LinkedIn photo that you're still using. Yeah, I was probably getting away with it 3 years ago and probably not anymore. So thanks everyone for joining the call, and I assume everyone can see me and hear me and see my screen. Maria, you shout if any of those things are not working well. But just, yeah, it'll be about 40 minutes, and as Maria said, please do shout with questions. When these are virtual sessions, obviously it's nice to know that there are actually bodies at the other end of the line that are listening. So please do shout with questions throughout, or keep them till the end, whatever suits best. Okay, so really, really quickly, we're not going to spend too much time with this, but just to explain for anyone who's not familiar who we are and what we do. And often we always say the easiest way to explain what we do is clarify what we don't do. So we're not trying to do what Nielsen, Kantar, Dunnhumby, or EYC, or any of those guys do really well. So we're not covering what metrics like sales data, market share, point of sale, that kind of stuff. Shopper Intelligence is about the how and the why shoppers do what they do. So it's almost like qualitative stuff, the softer kind of behavioral stuff, but we put metrics around it. So yeah, it's all about shopper behavior, shopper perceptions, shopper attitudes. Okay. And this is a global study. So what we're focusing on today for the most part is Ireland, obviously, but we do 750,000 interviews per year around the world. We're up to 11 countries at the moment, and we had a couple of new ones in Netherlands and Germany that launched, South Africa that launched over the last 12 months. And really the whole point of what we do is benchmarking. So it is, you could do bespoke studies to get shopper insights, but the way we do it is we cover every category in the store, every major retailer in the market, so you can benchmark yourself in any way you want, either category by category, retailer by retailer, channel by channel. Today the focus really is on, we can roll all those category insights up to industry level, and that's the main focus for today, although we have a few category things that we've thrown in towards the end. And the sample size that we are working with at the moment this year is about almost 25,000 responses. So that's the number of Irish shoppers that we've interviewed. So a small drop of the 750,000 globally. The US is about almost half of that. But I think a good chunky, robust program for a market the size of Ireland. Okay, and it's the fourth year we've been doing this. So as Maria said, we've 4 years of trend in a lot of areas. Okay, so there's four things we're going to look at. We're going to look at what's changed year on year. And year on year for us was our 2020 program. We actually stopped our field work a few weeks early because we got a purely pre-COVID read. So we actually stopped data collection around the 5th of March. We kept collecting it, and we had some trackers throughout the year, but for our main field work, we stopped collecting. So it wasn't a mix of pre and post COVID. It was pure pre-COVID. And then we also, and then our 2021 is this year's data, and it's kind of comparing how have shoppers shopped differently. So we're looking at what's changed, and I guess it's not just pandemic, right? It's also Brexit and all these other things. Like, I can't tell you for sure that these changes are only COVID related. There could be some Brexit stuff in there, and anything else as well. We'll look at shopper satisfaction and particularly at a retailer level, how that's changed. We have some shopper profiles then that we'll look at. We have one for each of the big 5 retailers in Ireland. I think Maria's put a poll up to see which ones you actually want to look at. So we probably have time to look at 2 of those. And then we'll look at some category information. Okay. So to start with, let's look at what's changed over the last 12 months. And a lot has changed, both in terms of grocery shopping, but in terms of the world. When we look at the, again, we work with clients at a category by category level, and at that level, things change year on year in terms of how the categories are set up, what shoppers like, what they don't like, that could be out of stocks, all those kind of things. So at a category level, things can change quite quickly and quite frequently. At a total market level, though, when we roll up all those 25,000 shoppers into one and kind of say, on average, how are shoppers shopping? For 2018, 19, and 20. We didn't even do a presentation like this looking at some of these metrics, because basically nothing changed. We didn't change the way we shopped in any great way. Maybe sustainability got more and more important year on year, and a few satisfaction scores changed, but really, behavior didn't change because there was nothing major happening in around us to cause it. But then 2020, 2021, loads changed. So what we've tried to distill this down into is kind of five main points. Where we think where the data says that shoppers have changed behavior. And again, this is 2020 being pre-COVID and 2021 being this year's data. Okay, so the first point is we became more organized and we did a lot more stuff at home. Now we'll go through these 5 things here. A lot of it should be a lot of it is obvious. A lot of it should be obvious, because if it wasn't obvious, then the data is wrong. But sometimes it's good to put metrics around this and kind of reinforce the things you're seeing or the things you're doing or the things you're hearing in the market. Okay, so the first point being we became more organized, and what we mean by that is we shopped with this mentality of I don't want to run out of stuff. So we have metrics in there that kind of measure that, and it's saying, I went shopping thinking I don't want to run out of that. Those products, and then when we aggregate that up overall, we're 8 points up versus previously. We're buying more to stock up at home, which goes hand in hand with that not wanting to run out. There was also more people doing a proper main weekly shop than ever before, and we'll talk a little bit about that again later. We were buying more for the whole family. So what that meant, I guess it just meant there were more people at home having all their meals and occasions at home. So we were buying for everybody. It wasn't like everyone was going off doing separate shops for themselves. We were more likely to be trying to get everything in one go on a main shop for the whole family. And then obviously, because we were locked at home for a lot of the year, our home consumption occasions went up. And we have about 6 different at-home consumption occasions, and they were all up about 5 to 7 points each. So that's about 35% of home consumption, or 35% increase in home consumption. Again, that's obvious. We were at home more, so that one should stack up. Point number 2 then was more about, in store in particular, we were making more conscious decisions. So in store, we were feeling under more time pressure. We were trying to shop quicker. We were more loyal to the store that we shop in, and we stayed shopping in the same store. Probably driven by lockdowns and things like that, and we want to stay within our 2K or our 5K or whatever it was. We became less expandable. So sorry, that should be a -4, I guess. We became less expandable, and that means we weren't just buying more stuff because all of a sudden we got turned into gluttons. We were actually buying more stuff because we didn't want to run out, and we wanted to stock up, and we were kind of buying them specifically for our occasions. We weren't just buying more to consume it and then go and buy more again, if that makes sense. And then tied to that, we actually got less impulsive, which stands to reason, I guess. If you're more organized and more planned and kind of on a main weekly shop and have your shopping list better set up, obviously you're going to be less impulsive in the store. But overall, we became less impulsive. And then things like sustainability, healthy Irishness became more important, and we were just more conscious of those kind of things when we were making decisions. Okay.
And Colm, is that the same across all categories?
Which one? The
you know what I mean? The fact that we were kind of less impulsive and it was more, I suppose, planned, that, you know what I mean, in terms of
no, it wouldn't be the case. No, that wouldn't be the case across all categories. This is on average. Yes, we became more pre-planned and less impulsive. But you had categories like a lot of actually most beer, wines, and spirits categories became more impulsive actually. So they booked that trend. So yeah, it's a good point. I should say these are the macro trends that kind of on average, here's what happened. But there will be categories that book that trend. So booze is one, for example, became more impulsive. And I think what drove that was shoppers were on more main shops. So as part of that main shop, they were working the store, getting everything they needed. And then it was like, oh, you know what? I'll get all my alcohol that I need for the week or the weekend or whatever it is while I'm here. So actually, we were buying more alcohol, but actually we were buying it more impulsively. And even things like breakfast meats, rasher sausages, things like that, that became more impulsive. It was more, and I think, you know, we work with a couple of meat suppliers, and the kind of thinking they had around it was a surprise, but it became, the thinking was, well, maybe shoppers were getting sick of just having the same old sandwich every day while they were working from home. So actually they were like making a rasher sandwich or cooking a fry for lunch or something like that, just something a little different. So actually it became an impulsive purchase. So those kind of things, yeah, absolutely. There are categories that every point I make here, there's a bunch of categories that book that trend. And that's the whole point of shopping titles, I guess, is that you get down to category level and understand that.
Yeah. And I suppose just to reiterate to everybody again, like we have a huge variety of attendees today, you know, covering lots of different product categories. So, you know, I would kind of say it to you again, like pop your questions into the chat if you kind of feel maybe, you know, oh, that doesn't seem relevant or that's not what I've seen. So do pop your questions in depending on what category service.
Absolutely. The third point then is around satisfaction, and it might sound hard to believe because we think about we were wearing masks and we were shopping quickly and we were queuing sometimes and we were socially distancing and we were spraying down trolleys and, you know, staying away from each other. Actually, satisfaction scores with grocery shopping went up. And went up for the first time. It was pretty flat for 3 years. Like I said, most of these metrics didn't change at all for 3 years, and then all of a sudden they changed. So we were more satisfied. We enjoyed shopping trips more. Things like, you know, it kind of felt like a lot of stuff went on, a lot of launches were on pause, but actually we had better perceptions around NPD and innovation. So I don't know if just our bar for enjoyment and satisfaction completely fell off a cliff because we were at home all the time, or if it was some kind of recognition that, you know, shoppers kind of thought, why didn't the industry do well to stay in stock and keep us fed and keep us watered and all those kind of things. But either way, those satisfaction scores are higher now than they've ever been in Ireland, and actually we'll see globally as well. But because it's, I think, you know, in March, April last year, all the commentary was about, listen, we're going into a global lockdown, which means we're going into global recession. And the last time we did a recession, it was all about value and discounters and private label and saving on a shopping trip. Actually, what's happened is the opposite. We're buying more premium than we've ever bought. And at the same time, our perception of quality and premium has gone up. We're more brand focused. We're more open. We're slightly less open to private label, actually. Now, that's only a small decrease, but I kind of show it just because the expectation would have been that it would be open as the private label went up and brand focus went down, whereas actually the opposite has happened. And then despite trading up more, buying more premium, and even spending more on groceries, like you look at any of the Kantar and Nielsen numbers, they're all saying like we're spending more on groceries than we ever did. Our satisfaction with price went up, and it's higher than it's ever been as well, right? So it's quite interesting that it's not necessarily related to how much we're spending. It's kind of, there's a value for money perception in there as well. And maybe there's a group of shoppers in there who never did a main weekly shop before, who all of a sudden realize, wow, if I'm organized and if I get everything in one go, I save a fortune week in, week out. But whatever is causing it, either way, satisfaction scores were high for price, or increased for price. And then we added a new question this year around online shopping. So it's the percentage of shoppers who also shop online is 17%. Now we don't have a trend on that. We will next year. And on almost 9 in 10 said they continue to do so into the future. So you know, a pretty good trial repeat. And then of that, within that, then Tesco working on the largest share, followed by Supervalue. Okay. So they're the main points. That there's a lot more there. There's some stuff we could drill into, but that's kind of, from our perspective, most of the metrics that we kind of think are the key things that changed year on year. Okay. Let's just drill into the online shopping for a moment, because it was an interesting question. And if we look at we asked shoppers. Now we're interviewing shoppers who shopped in store, right? Just to be really clear, kind of what's happening here. But we say, did you also shop this category online? And when we asked them that question, it's SuperValu and Tesco are the two shoppers in store who are also shopping more, who are more likely to shop online, which kind of says, and maybe it's obvious, but it kind of says if you have an online presence, your shoppers are more likely to shop online as well. Okay. Where were those shoppers shopping? Again, we saw on the previous page, Tesco had the highest share. And even for an Aldi, an in-store Aldi shopper, Dunnes shopper, Lidl shopper, they're most of the time they're also shopping online. If they're shopping online, they're shopping at Tesco. But I think what's interesting is the SuperValu shopper is also, there's a big percentage who also shop online at Tesco. And it's less of a kind of, the Tesco shopper seems to be more loyal to Tesco online, if that makes sense. So just in terms of where they shop. And then again, the SuperValu and Tesco shoppers are more likely to continue to shop. It's a pretty high percentage across the board, but it just goes to show that, or I think this shows us that if you have for those stores that have an online presence, i.e. SuperValu and Tesco, you are more likely to have an online shopper and keep an online shopper. Okay, there's some kind of brand loyalty that plays out there. Okay,
sorry, Colm, can I just ask a quick question? Is there any sense of why Tesco has the greatest share of online shoppers? Was that?
We didn't ask anything about that, but my understanding is I think they have better coverage, and maybe somebody else on the call has kind of facts around that. But I think anytime we've shown those shares, it stacks up with what people expected. I think Tesco just have a bigger online business and maybe have more coverage around the country or something like that.
Thanks.
Okay. And then the last point on some of the online stuff is just, we also just, out of the 130 odd categories that we measure, we just kind of say, well, what were the 20 most likely categories to be shopped online and the least likely categories to be shopped online? And we won't go through them one by one, but again, we'll share this. And it's just, it's interesting that if you look at the least likely, it's a lot of traditionally impulse products, and also a lot of very fresh meat-based product as well. That are the least likely to be shopped online. They're the kind of the main two trends there. If you look at the list on the right hand side, on the left hand side, maybe it's more niche products or things that are more shelf stable, or things that are maybe not bought all that frequently, like sun care, foot care, beauty, hair care, things like that. That's the kind of trend that we notice at least. But again, there may be some comments or questions on that. Okay.
Thanks, Colm. I'm just wondering, do we want to launch our first poll? And actually, we've had a question that actually has come in asking the very same thing. So it's going to be really interesting to see what people think. So we're going to launch a quick poll now, looking at those 5 items that have, I suppose, changed during COVID. And we're all, I suppose, aware of what goes on in the papers and people saying the new normal, and, will things go back to the way they were, or what new behaviors are actually going to stick? So we're going to ask everybody here, out of those 5 things, which one do you think actually will stay?
Yep. I don't know the answer, by the way, just so you're clear. I'll come back next year and tell you.
When we finish, Colm, answer.
Purely opinion.
I think the online
I'll have the answer
one,
for next year.
Yeah, and I think the online shopping one and the different categories, the categories that do well with online, that's very interesting for people to think about. That it's again, for different suppliers depending on what area they're supplying.
Okay. And I should say, it's our online could have been anything. It could have been, again, we were interviewing an in-store shopper saying, do you also shop this category online? So just to be clear, it could have been online at one of the big 5 retailers. It could also have been, on Buy Me. It could have been on My Milk. My Milk. It's kind of any kind of online or app type thing. It could have been Amazon. So it could have been any online shopping.
Okay.
Just so we're clear. What those numbers are.
I'm going to share the results and hope. I'm not sure what whether you can see that. Yeah. Okay. So out and out winner is online shopping. It's 64%, with 20% there for number 2, which is the conscious decision making. So
I find most interesting in that. I find that nobody picked number 4, as in nobody thinks that. I think that suggests nobody thinks that the premium tier will hold up, as in we won't keep shopping premium because we're consuming at home. Now that we're going to restaurants, pubs again, maybe we'll go back to kind of we trade down again.
Okay, that was interesting. I'll close that off and I'll hand back to you, Colm.
Cool. The other one then that we'll drill into is the point number 3 around satisfaction, because it's interesting to look at how satisfied the Irish shopper is. And the Irish shopper is 66% satisfied, which on its own means absolutely nothing. And I guess we're all about benchmarking, so we can benchmark within Ireland, but we can also benchmark around the world. So if we go back to 2018, we'll kind of look at 4 years of trend here and see how satisfaction scores around the world in our other studies have moved for grocery shoppers. And listen, grocery is different in every market. Some markets have discounters, some don't. Some have club like the US and Canada, or kind of cash and carry type things, or club, is that what they're called? Mass and club. So they're different. The market is very different in every market, just so we're clear. But you can see there in 2018, most of the scores were down. There's a bit of a downward trend across the globe. That was the first year we ran in Ireland in 2018. A bit of an upward trend then in 2019, generally across the board. So it's been, it's a bit up and down, a bit mixed here and there. But the one thing that was staying constant was 2018, 2019, 2020, the Irish satisfaction scores stayed at 63%. So it didn't change. Then all of a sudden from 2020 onwards, as soon as the pandemic hit, our satisfaction scores went up. And we were in pretty good company, because the trend everywhere seems to be that shoppers just became more satisfied. For some reason, the Canadians are a bit pissed off about things, and I'm not really sure why. I haven't dug into it. Not by much, it only dropped a point or two. But there are some big shifts there. Like the UK's gone up quite significantly. New Zealand is the second flag in there that went up quite significantly. So, there was some good movement there, and just generally it shows that it wasn't just us. It was across the board, across the world. Shoppers just were more satisfied despite all those restrictions and things in store when we were shopping. It became the only game in town for a while. So I think everyone recognized that. So if we drill into the Irish score now, what we're going to look at is some satisfaction scores by retailer. So where is that 66% coming from? So we asked shoppers a number of questions about how satisfied were you, with the product you bought, across price metrics, product metrics, assortment, execution. So there's 18 different metrics, 130 categories. And when we roll them up for each retailer, these are the satisfaction scores that we get overall. Okay, so we don't ask overall, how satisfied are you? This is a calculated score using multiple questions, multiple categories rolled up into a score for Aldi, Dunnes, Lidl, SuperValu, Tesco. And the first thing to note is, these satisfaction scores can go from plus 100 to minus 100. So, there's only a 5-point range between Aldi at number 1 and SuperValu at number 5. So the gap isn't that big, but it's consistent. And like, look at those scores year on year for the last 4 years. And by and large, they've been fairly consistent in terms of who's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which tells us that, first of all, the Irish shoppers clearly have a kind of a ranking in their mind, even though the gaps are tight. They kind of still have that ranking. It's stayed true over the 4 years. But second of all, it's bloody hard to shift perception. If you're trying to do something or trying to change something, it is actually quite hard to shift perception. It takes time. It can't be just a one shot and expect a marketing or above the line campaign to work and then your job is done. It takes time, and it might not be recognized or appreciated for a couple of years. And SuperValu is what I'm thinking of when we look at the next page, specifically on price. But Aldi rank number 1 and have been for 4 years. And if we look at the next page as to why that's happening, price is one of the things that rolls up into overall satisfaction. And you can see there that Aldi are winning on price and have been winning on price year on year, even against Lidl. But there's a clear gap back then to Tesco, who are getting the next score. Dunnes and SuperValu are getting the lower scores. But again, look at SuperValu's score there, right? It's been steadily increasing year on year since 2018, that price perception. And it is the biggest increase across the big 5. So we'll see later on that, SuperValu have this premium perception and shoppers see it as the premium retailer in Ireland, but they're also increasing their price satisfaction score. So you could say there's a nice balance there. They're holding on to that premium tier, but they're also increasing their perception around price. And in particular, there's a fixed low price metric within there, every EDLP, that is increasing the most. So a lot of the work they've been doing on private label price perception, we are priced competitively at that lower tier as well, is starting to resonate. Just to know as well, the Dunn's satisfaction scores here does not include the voucher. Because we're collecting this at a product level, so it's very much kind of the price ticket on the item. So I don't know where Dunn's would sit if we could somehow layer in a kind of an allowance for that voucher. Would they be above Tesco? Would they be closer to the discounters? I don't know. Happy to get suggestions or thoughts on that one. But this is where the price metrics. So there's 4 metrics with the price, but that's where price perception sits. The other 3 areas then are that roll up into that overall satisfaction score are product metrics, and it's a bit more clustered here. The only outlier really being Lidl, but Dunn's, Tesco, SuperValu, and Aldi as well are actually quite closely clustered together. So there are, and product metrics in our language are things like quality, freshness, premium, Irishness. Now, certain retailers win on those individual metrics, but overall they group quite closely together, apart from Lidl. The next one is assortment, and assortment scores across the board pretty much went up, but in particular, again, at SuperValu, and as we'll see later on, they're still very much a top-up destination, but they've had more main shoppers in store than ever before. So maybe those main shoppers are kind of saying, actually, there is a good range here. So they've had a big increase. But generally speaking, there has been an increase on assortment. But Lidl is, and has been for a few years, the outlier there as well. So again, there's something, what is causing that difference between Aldi and Lidl? Because they're very similar in some ways. But there is something about the Aldi shopper that they're far more satisfied. They're slightly more satisfied on price, far more satisfied on product metrics, and now on assortment metrics. And then the final of the 4 areas that roll up into the overall are execution, which is essentially ease of shop. We've probably taken a little bit of artistic license here because there's actually only a point in between each one, so the gaps might look a little bigger than they really are. But there's not much in this. The ease of shop is quite good everywhere. Like 68 is the lowest score, 72 is the highest score. And there's not much in it. Again, SuperValu see the biggest increase year on year. And again, you have to think about, they have more main shoppers in store. Maybe they're finding their way around and doing a main shop pretty easily, easier than I thought they might have to. But yeah, generally speaking, those scores are quite tight. Okay. So they are our satisfaction scores. And one point then before we go into our retailer profiles, this is a bit of a complicated page in some ways. So I will, I'm going to just try and explain it first. It's even complicated for me to start explaining it, apparently. So these are the 18 metrics that rolled up into those satisfaction scores in the previous page. Okay, so we have price metrics, product metrics, assortment metrics, and ease of shop metrics. Okay, what this page though is looking at is not satisfaction. It's looking at, well, how important are each of these things to shoppers at each of the big 5 retailers, right? Because, and this page actually tells us quite a lot about what shoppers expect at each retailer. So what we're going to see is 5 lines appear: a blue line, a yellow line, an orange line, a purple line, a blue, and a light blue line for each of the retailers. And basically, the higher up the line is for each retailer, the more important that metric is. Okay, that makes sense. So it'll make sense when I show it, hopefully. So let's take Tesco as an example. First of all, if you look for the light blue line across the board, and you can see that actually it appears near the top, if not on the top, for almost every metric. And what that's telling us is that either by design or default, Tesco have kind of created this situation where their shoppers expect them to be a bit of everything. They expect them to be priced really well, like a discounter. They expect them to have the product credentials of like a SuperValu or whatever it might be, or a Dunn's. They expect them to be range the best, first to market with NPD, and really easy and enjoyable to shop. So it's, arguably they have the toughest job. Or they've created that situation where their shoppers are kind of expecting everything, they're trying to be all things to all people. Look for SuperValu then, which is the purple line. They get the lowest important scores on most price metrics. So look at the price, identifying value, and especially fixed low price. They're lowest. And Dunn's are quite close to them on all in terms of being second lowest. That's telling us that actually their shoppers are not shopping there expecting the cheapest prices. What they are expecting, if you look at the product metrics, are, again, look at the purple line. Okay, quality and fresh are kind of high for everybody, so let's exclude those as kind of sanitary. They're expected. But SuperValu highest on premium, highest on Irishness, highest on traceability, and as high on all the other areas. They're the things that shoppers are expecting when they go to SuperValu, right? That's what's most important to a SuperValu shop. Dunn's are quite similar, by the way. And if you look at Aldi and Lidl, look where they're really high. They're really high in fixed low price. and Tesco are the closest to them. They're really high on price, and again, Tesco are up there with them. So, but then look for that navy and orange lines elsewhere, and they're actually near the bottom and everything else. So it's kind of saying that the discounters, the obsession for shoppers, what's important, what they're expecting is fixed low prices. Everything else is a bonus. That's kind of what that's explaining. So in one page, I think, well, we're biased obviously, but we think that this encapsulates very clearly what each retailer stands for, or what the shopper at each retailer expects when they're walking into that store. Okay. Which leads us nicely then into our shopper profiles. And Marie, I think you had asked the audience which ones they want to look at. Because we have 5, we probably only have time. Maybe actually we only have time to look at one. So what came out on top? Or did we do that one yet? Yeah, we did.
I've just launched it there now.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
See what they vote for.
Cool. So we might only have time to look at one, but let's see. Let's see how we're getting on.
It's going to be challenging. It's pretty neck and neck.
All right. Well, maybe we'll go through too quickly. And we'll share these with you afterwards anyway, so you'll get to look at the others.
Yeah.
And if there's any questions, obviously shout.
Okay, come on. Last few voters are really going to swing it one way or the other.
We know who is in this one. So we know.
Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Okay, so I will share what it looks like. Out and out winner is Super Value at 44%. Okay. And then neck and neck Dunnes and Tesco's at 34%.
No, Aldi is 38.
Oh, sorry, and Aldi is 38. So you've Super Value and Aldi then are the, I suppose, technically the top two.
So the poll was not rigged, but strangely, they were the two I had picked to present, because they're actually kind of the two, in terms of our profiles, kind of two polar opposites in terms of shoppers. So I don't have to duck out of my presentation. I can just keep showing you. Keep going. So, sorry, yeah, there's a question. Oh, you're on mute there, Kieran. You're on mute, Kieran. Give him a nudge there, Maria.
Yeah, no, I had heard background noise, so I just quickly muted him, but I didn't want to ask a question. I just see if I can unmute him again.
Okay.
Okay.
Customer demographics, different profile of customers breakdown, because they've given a blended view there, so to speak.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. This is we're talking a little bit about demographics now, kind of which one's over indexed at which retailer. Yeah, listen, this is the average Irish shopper, the average Dunnes shopper, the average Tesco shopper, but we can get into more specifics. Today we don't have time to get into, if we isolate the younger shopper or the family shopper for each retailer, who's winning, who's losing. So yeah, it is very much an average.
Yeah, that would give an interesting insight,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have that kind of stuff. So again, we could do a session on specific family groups or demographics or age or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because that would give us a feeling of trends,
Yeah, absolutely.
As opposed to a blended view, it's very difficult to interpret.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But actually, on that point, like if we look at, sorry, it's probably not as clear for Super Value. Sorry, it is. Yeah, if we look at the Super Value shopper, for example, where the type of shopper that they over-index on, and again, this is not a surprise, I would imagine, because we've shown this as Super Value, and they would agree. They rank number one for having an older shopper, right? So they do over-index on that older shopper. They over-index on having a more top-up shopper, even though their main shops have increased year on year. They still over-index and are ranked number one of the 5 retailers for having more of a top-up shopper. Their shoppers are going in there with that mindset of, I'm going to stock up, I don't want to run out, probably because they're on a top-up. But still, despite all that, despite being on a top-up, not stocking up, their basket spend is still very high. So they're spending, they really are spending. And one of the main reason for that is that Super Value over-index and ranked number one for the 4 years that we've been doing this on having a premium shopper. Having a shopper who says, I don't mind paying more or paying more for premium, for a premium item, right? At the same time, they have a shopper who is very much looking out for pre-store promotions. So they're looking for pre-store promotions on certain products, or generally across the board, through flyers or catalogs, whatever it might be. They're actually joint number one with Tesco on that. And it's no coincidence that the two, Tesco and Super Value, who both do kind of loyalty schemes and things like that, they are the ones who are most effective at driving shoppers into the store with tailored promotions. So I guess it stands to reason. Okay, so that's kind of how they're shopping the category. We've seen already through those importance scores that SuperValu has one of the least price savvy shoppers. And what we mean by that is all those price importance metrics were lowest at SuperValu and at Dunnes. So they're kind of neck and neck on that one. Dunnes are slightly oh, sorry, they're the same scores there. So they're the least price savvy. They're also not particularly open to private label. They're far more kind of thinking about on going into store for brands. Again, there will be categories that book that trend at SuperValu, but by and large, they're coming in thinking, I'm looking for a particular brand, not particularly for private label. Okay, again, at a total store level. I should say on the private label one though, if you compare that to a couple of years ago, that private label score, openness to private label at SuperValu, is a lot higher than it was. So it is an upward trajectory on private label, but it's still quite low compared to the discounters and Tesco in particular. And then we've looked at the satisfaction scores already, so no need to harp on those too much. But again, fixed low price is one of the metrics that has increased the most at SuperValu. So they're somehow managing to sustain this premium tier in the mind of the Irish shopper, but they're also increasing their satisfaction scores with everyday low price or fixed low price. So it is a bit of a balancing act, and at some point, do the two meet, or does the premium perception come down as the everyday low price comes up? I don't know. All we can do is track it and let you know how shoppers think. But it is interesting that they are still holding that premium tier perception while increasing price perception. On the other end of the spectrum, then you have Aldi, and actually, if you look at the Aldi shopper, and again, this is the reason why I picked these two, so I'm glad it was two that people pulled out. The Aldi shopper really over-indexes for having the female shopper coming into this in that 35 to 50 age group, shopping for the whole family on a main shop. So actually, quite a different shopper to SuperValu on average, right? They're really coming in on that main weekly shop, buying for everybody. They're very pre-planned, and they rank number one for that I don't want to run out metric. We saw just previously, the SuperValu shopper is the least likely to shop with that kind of stock up, don't want to run out mode. The Aldi shopper is the most likely. Okay, so they're really going in to fill the trolley. Okay, Aldi also have the most loyal shopper of the five retailers. They are the least influenced by pre-store or in-store promotions. Again, a stark contrast to SuperValu. They were the most. They were really driven into store with promotions. The Aldi shopper is not. Arguably, they're driven into store by loyalty and kind of satisfaction with their previous trip. But the Aldi shopper, joined with Lidl, is the most likely to try new and different. And again, I think the discounters have trained their shopper to not know what to expect, even though they're really pre-planned. There's going to be stuff in there you didn't expect, and they're the most open to trying new and different. Again, in contrast to SuperValu, Aldi have the most price savvy shopper, so they're even slightly ahead of Lidl on that one. Most price savvy, they strongly over-index for trial and then future repeat purchase of private label, so they love private label. But even though they love private label, actually they're ranked number 2 on that trade up to premium metric. Now, trading up to premium in Aldi is a very different proposition to trading up to premium at a SuperValu or at a multiple, right? They are different price points, they're different products. But still, I think it's an interesting one. Within, even though they love private label, even though they're really price savvy, they're still open to trading up to premium. Maybe at a different level or price point, but they're still really, they can still distinguish between what's premium and what's everyday. So it's an interesting distinction. And again, we've looked at those satisfaction scores already. Aldi ranked number 1, but in particular, their execution scores, their price and execution scores are really good. So priced really well, easy to shop. Not saying it's the most enjoyable to shop, right? It is fairly cookie cutter laid out. It's a simple shopping trip and quite kind of clean and open. But that's what shoppers are expecting when they win there. So they are really quite happy with that. Okay. So they're the two profiles. Again, if there's questions now, shout now. If not, we can take questions towards the end. We have one of these for each of the 5. So that's those pretty quickly because of just one more section to show you. But hopefully they make sense. The whole idea of that is to try and say, if we were to define the average Aldi shopper on a page, that's it. Again, we're not breaking. We can on this page. We're not breaking out by different demographics, but that's kind of where they over-index. That's the stuff that typifies the Aldi and SuperValu shopper.
And Colm, if anybody does have questions about a specific retailer or a specific product category, is it all right for them to ping you an email?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. The Final section then is just a really quick one looking at, okay, well, everything we've looked at so far is pretty much at a macro level, looking at the average Irish shopper and how they shop and how they're satisfied and getting down to a retailer level. But let's look at just some specific category roles, because essentially this is our bread and butter. This is what we do, and this is what we work with clients on. And the easiest way for us to present this is on our category role matrix. So we use a few different metrics and aggregate the scores together. But essentially what we're trying to do here is from left to right on the screen, all the categories will appear on this matrix in a moment. But the further right they are on the screen, the more intentional they are, the more pre-planned they are. Basically, the more likely they are to be on the shopping list. Shoppers are coming to the store for those products. The higher up on the screen, then, the more engaged they are with those categories once they arrive into the store. So you've kind of got a license to disrupt them a little bit. You can trade them up to premium. They want to browse the category. They're interested. They want to spend time. They enjoy shopping, right? That's the point. So then, depending on where you are on intentionality or engagement, you're either a hero category, a trip driver, a basket builder, or a profit booster. Okay. Some of the categories will start to appear. I couldn't show everything. I've tried to pick most categories of people who are on the call here today. But if you don't see your category, give us a shout, and I can send you this with your category populated on it. But I guess the point is that every category is a role to play. And this is shoppers telling us the role that category plays. It's not my opinion. It's not a retailer's opinion. It's not a brand owner's opinion. This is what shoppers say the role each category plays, right? So if you look at hero categories, for example, these are the really pre-planned categories on the shopping list, top of the shopping list. So they're really pre-planned, but you can still engage them once they get there. You kind of two bites of the cherry. You get them into the store with this category, but you can also trade them up and tempt them once they get in there as well. And it's a lot of categories. It's called hero category, not for this reason, but there's a lot of categories that are the hero of the dish. It's a lot of the protein in the dinner, you know, the kind of the main event. You see beef there, fish there, fresh chicken is there, seafood, things like coffee is there as well. Tea is also lands in the hero category. So really important pre-planned categories, but you can trade them up and you can tempt them and you can disrupt them once they get into the store. Trip driver are similar in that they are very pre-planned categories and intentional categories, but they're categories that once the shopper's actually in store, they want to get in there really quickly. So it has to be a simple shop, or what they want is a simple shop. They don't really want any fuss. They want it to be really easy to shop. Oftentimes they know exactly which brand and which SKU particular product they want, so they want to get in and out, and they don't want to spend a whole lot of time in the category. Okay, so for example, if you have NPD or if you have things like that, it's going to be tricky in that quadrant. Basket builder then tends to be categories that they were planned, so they were low intentionality, they were a bit more impulsive, so you need a bit of display or some kind of trigger in store to drive that purchase. But if a shopper sees that promotion or sees that display, and if it's a bit of a no-brainer for them to throw in the basket, they will. So often it's a bit of a stock-up thing, maybe, or you can attract them with promotions. It could be low-value items or items that are kind of shelf-stable. You say, you know what, that's a good deal. I'm going to throw that in my basket. It's not going to go off at home. Things like oral care or carbs or energy drinks, you know, it's not going to go off. So I didn't plan to buy it, but I'm going to throw it in the basket. Profit booster then is similarly impulsive, but it's more of a treat myself category. So and shoppers are, even though it's impulsive, once they're there, they will engage with the category. They will trade up. So things like beauty categories, flowers and plants, gin, Christmas snacks, just about creeps in there. Some fruit categories, rashers and sausages, Irish whiskey, things like that. So they are what we call profit booster categories. Okay. So again, I couldn't show everything, or you'd see nothing there. But that's just to give you a flavor of some of the categories that land on the different quadrants. And I guess the point of this is this is where shoppers say the category lands, and this is the role that they say the category plays for them. If that suits, and if you like where it sits, well, then you do more. You know, you exploit that, you capitalize on that, and do the things that shoppers are asking you to do. If you don't like where it is, and you kind of say, God, I think, you know, we're in basket builder, we should really be a hero, we should be a more engaged category. Well, then you put things in place to try and engage shoppers more on the things that are important to them. And then track it year on year to see, well, have we moved the dot the way we want to move? So often our clients would use this with retailers to kind of set a target for the following year to say, actually, you know, we should be moving up the page in terms of engagement. So that's how it's used, but it's useful just to say, where do we sit in the mind of the shopper right now?
Colm, there's a question in there, and it's a test to say, where does pet food sit in those four categories?
Pet food is in trip driver, so it's one of these ones in here. But whoever that was, I can send them exactly where it sits. It sits there around bananas, I think. Nothing to do with bananas. I just know it sits around there. So.
That's perfect. I suppose it'd be interesting, if the supermarket started to lay their stores out, in line with these, how would we shop differently if a store was laid out so that all our hero products were together and all our builders?
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, that's the point of this as well, is to bring this information to the retailers, say, look, we are a hero category. And here's what we should be doing more of or less of. We are a trip driver. Do we want to drive more engagement, or are we, if you're the number one within a trip driver category, number one brand, I guess you're happy with that because you're the one that shoppers are grabbing by default. So maybe you don't want to change anything. So, it depends on where you sit within the category.
Yeah, and I think it's important for producers and that to know, well, actually, are they wasting their money trying to do certain activities if it doesn't suit that category or the shopper behavior? Can you save yourself money by not trying things that won't work? Yeah.
That's a really good point. Often we'd say, this would at least help you to guide you in terms of, right, if I've €1 more to spend on something, do I invest it pre-store or do I invest it in store? That's at a very, very basic level. That's what this matrix tells you. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important, a very important thing for producers to really think about is how best can they spend their, where will it have the most impact.
The last point then is I've just isolated 6 categories because year on year, usually the roles don't change all that much, but actually we saw a few categories this year that dramatically changed within 12 months, the role that they played. And often some of these movements would take 3 or 4 or 5 years because this stuff is a slow burn. There are categories that live in certain quadrants and don't move all that much unless something drastic happens. But if you take like some of those frozen categories, for example, all of a sudden frozen categories went from being a fairly impulsive addition to the basket going, you know what, I will throw in some frozen fish or frozen seafood or frozen potatoes and chips, to being really pre-planned purchases. They now became part of the shopping list, whereas they weren't previously. And similarly then, it's kind of hidden in there, but rashers and sausages went the other way. And again, none of these things don't necessarily need to be positives or negatives. Obviously, if your category is declining from a market share perspective, then the movement is a negative. But, rashers and sausages, I don't think decline, but the way shoppers shopped it changed. It became more impulsive. I think we talked about this at the start. And new occasions started to emerge. I don't think people were having fries or rasher sandwiches at home in the middle of the week previously, but when we worked from home all the time, all of a sudden they did. And it was a bit of trying something different. There's a couple of fruit categories, citrus fruit, exotic fruits, all of a sudden became a lot more intentional than they were. Citrus is a really good example.
Do you think that the boom in gin has anything to do with
it? Gin went that way. Gin went towards profit booster. So clearly
the lemons and limes had to go with it.
We were on our main shop. Yeah, exactly. We were on our main shop, and it's not showing the page here, but yeah, gin did go towards profit booster more on a main shop, and we were probably like, oh my god, another week at home, right? Bottle of gin, impulsively throw a bottle of gin in the basket. So yeah, it's just to show there were categories that did move, and some of them quite drastically. So there's a lot of categories that never move, and that's not a bad thing or a good thing or a bad thing. Like milk will be a trip driver forevermore, probably traditional milk. But there are some categories that move. And again, it's important to track these things year on year because brands should be leading the conversations with retailers in terms of, right, our category has changed in role. We need to reflect that in how we set it up, either pre-store or in store. Okay. So I've gone on a little longer than planned, but that's it. And excuse the shameless sales plug or sales pitch, but our data collection for next year starts in a few weeks. So anybody who likes that and would like to see it for their category or more detail for their category, give us a shout. We still got time to get involved for next year. And as well on that matrix, if anybody does want, or maybe Maria, I don't know if we collect it through you or everyone just email me. But get in touch with us if your category wasn't on that page and you want to know where it sits. We can populate and share it with you.
Yeah, perfect.
Right. That's it from me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Colm. So we have another couple of minutes. If anybody wants to pop any questions into the chat, we can take them. And as Colm mentioned, we will look at not only traceability, but probably a couple of the sustainability and Irishness metrics at our next webinar on October 20th. So you can use the same link. We will obviously promote and share it across social media in the next couple of months or couple of weeks. So do keep an eye out for it. If anybody hasn't registered, or if you're feeling anyway tech savvy, you can use your mobile phone there to scan the QR code, and it'll bring you through to the registration page. As I said, any questions, good feedback there, Colm, coming in from the attendees. And I suppose a big thank you to everybody for actually signing up. We've had brilliant attendance. I'd say it's probably one of the best webinars we've ever run in terms of attendance. So obviously people are keen to learn. Great engagement with the polls. So thank you very much for that. And and everybody stayed right to the end. So thank you, Colm. I think it's testament to yet another very high quality presentation.
Good. Glad everyone liked it.
Yeah. Brilliant, everyone. Okay, sure, we'll close off there. And if anybody has any questions, they can just email either myself or Colm, and we can take it up.
Great. All right. Thanks folks.
Good night. Bye.
Bye-bye.